January 6, 1813. No matter how hard the commander-in-chief of the Russian army Kutuzov tried, he still could not influence the opinion of Alexander I, Russian Emperor. Mikhail Illarionovich Kutuzov did not want to go to Europe to fight for progressive humanity, but planned to give a stop order if not on the Niemen, then on the Vistula. Soldiers and officers of the Russian army were read the order of the Russian Emperor. The most merciful sovereign congratulated the troops on the expulsion of the enemy from Russia and ordered to pursue the enemy in Europe. On January 13, Russian troops under the command of Field Marshal Kutuzov crossed the Niemen River and with it the country's borders. The foreign campaign of the Russian army began, and it began victoriously. A few weeks later Königsberg was occupied, captured Warsaw, and the French line of defense on the Vistula River was destroyed. The Prussian army helped the Russian army in many operations, and quite often, even without the order of his king. Officially, this German state declared war on France only at the end of March 1813. In Europe, many associated the defeat of the French with the bleeding of their army and with the fact that their army was headed not by a brilliant commander, but by his stepson, Eugene de Beauharnais. The emperor himself at that time was forming a new army in Paris. 100,000 experienced soldiers were transferred to the regular army from the National Guard. In addition to them, 140,000 recruits were mobilized, who were barely 18 years old. Local newspapers derisively called the beardless and beardless youths Marie-Louise, just like the emperor's young wife. The call also included older citizens and even the disabled. Postponements, according to the most severe illnesses, according to officials, were cancelled. Only the richest, as it seems, even though 200 years have passed, the French managed to escape from service. For a certain recompense, they hired the poor to carry out military service for them. From the beginning of the 19th century, the so-called substitution system was officially legalized. One way or another, already in the spring, instead of the almost completely lost Napoleonic army in Russia, Napoleon had at his disposal, according to historians, up to 250,000 soldiers. True, Bonaparte failed to recreate strong cavalry and artillery. On April 18, 1813, the French emperor went from Paris to the army in order to personally direct military operations. And the next day, the Russian troops suffered a heavy loss. In the small Prussian town of Bunzlau, at the age of 68, Mikhail Illarionovich Kutuzov died, one of the main creators of the victory in the Patriotic War of 1812, and perhaps the only person in the world who knew how to defeat Napoleon. The body was embalmed and sent to St. Petersburg to be buried in the Kazan Cathedral. On the square in front of the cathedral, a figure of a military leader was installed with a laconic tablet, to Field Marshal Golenischev Kutuzov Smolensky, 1812. At the place of death in Bunzlau, by decree of the Prussian king, a monument to the Russian commander was also erected. It was inscribed in German and Russian. Prince Kutuzov Smolensky has brought victorious troops to this place. But here death put an end to his main deeds. He saved his fatherland and opened the way to the deliverance of Europe. May the memory of the hero be blessed. For the skillful leadership of the army, Mikhail Kutuzov was awarded the title of Prince of Smolensk. He also received the Order of St. George of the First Degree as a reward, becoming his first full cavalier in the history of Russia. The victorious liberation of Europe from the French was led by Emperor Alexander I, who decided to continue the war with Napoleon outside of Russia. The reason for the hatred of Russia is in its strength. It is only among the Russians that God is not in power, but in truth. For the whole world God is in power. As Napoleon said, God helps strong battalions. The main mistake of all the enemies of Russia was that they underestimated the Russian people, considered them slavish, dark, lazy. There is no people about which so many lies, absurdities, and slander would be invented as the Russian people. Empress Catherine II the Great once said,